Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. It's Friday. Woo!
All right.
What Johnny Kim say? Just got paid. Y'all seeing. Okay. I know. I'm not talking about my brother. Y'all see him every week. No. Y'all see him. Look up. Over there. Y'all see him.
Okay.
What? I ain't finna do. D, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, big dog. Go ahead, big bro.
First, welcome to Be Real with D Real. All of y'all that's in the comment section rocking with us. Unless you're blind, you see that there is an extra bar there. This is the 2003 International Martial Arts Hall of Fame writer. 2006. And if not mistaken, 2011, 2012, 2014 Bram Stoker Award recipient.
Bam, bam, bam.
And for the people in the audience, y'all know him from Power, the Black Panther story. Okay, give it up for award.
Oh, wait. No, heck no. Because I likes this right here. I forgot. Boy, look here. Benicio del Toro, you took the movie and transferred to a daggum novel and won a daggum award for that? Oh, hell
no. As I said, too much stuff for me to name. Okay? Give it up for Jonathan Maberry. Give it up for Jonathan Maberry.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh man! I feel like Ray Lewis right before a game started.
How fast you want us to go? You want us to go slow? Want us to go fast?
Any speed you want? I can hang on for the curves. You know.
Okay. Can we get into the horror stuff first? Because that's what they are least familiar with. Okay. Right. Now here's what I didn't know. I didn't know that V Wars was a novel before it was a comic book, because I read the IDW. Hold up. That right there. Okay. And for those of you that don't know, it takes kind of a different slant on the vampire mythos, whereas the general where it's usually transferred supernaturally is more biological.
Yeah, V-Wars is a fun project. I was, the way I got started in that project, I had been invited into an anthology at IDW by Max Brooks, who did World War Z. Max is a buddy of mine. And it was a G.I. Joe anthology, and I didn't know anything about G.I. Joe. When I was a kid, G.I. Joe was a 12-inch tall World War II character. But I didn't know all the smaller ones. So Max arranged for Hasbro to send me some research material. So I got a case of comic books, DVDs, and toys. So I sat on my living room floor, grown man, sat on my living room floor, watching cartoons, reading comics, playing with toys for research. The takeaway here is I love my job. Yeah. So after that anthology wrapped, and it was a lot of fun doing that. They wanted to do another anthology, but Max was busy making a movie. So they asked me if I'd do one, and I said, yeah, I do, but it's going to be different than that. And I'm a science nerd, so like I read a lot of science, and I had just started reading about melting polar ice up in the Arctic, releasing trapped diseases and so on, that's in the soil. And I thought, writers tend to think, well, what's the worst that can happen? Because that's how we come up with ideas. You see anything and say, what's the worst that can happen? So I thought, well, what happened if that triggered dormant genes that coded for different symptoms? And those symptoms are what originally led people to believe in vampires. Some body changes, a thirst for blood and so on, but it wasn't supernatural. It was science fiction. I'd already done supernatural vampires in novels. So I pitched it as a shared world. So there are 4 volumes in the series, not counting the comics. The 4 volumes of the book, each one I wrote like a 50,000 word short novel, broke it up, and then invited other writers to come in and write field reports about the outbreak. That way we could get more diversity of cultural experiences and different viewpoints on it, and we got to really explore it deeply. And between the volumes of the book, they asked me if IDW asked me if I'd like to write some comics for it. I'm like, duh. Anytime somebody asks me if I want to write comics, I'm like, I just want to smack you in the head for asking a stupid question. Yes, the answer is always yes. So I went up doing it. I had amazing cover artist Ryan Brown, who's now doing covers for DC and Marvel, and great interior art, and we had just a ton of fun with it. And I was like totally shocked when Netflix picked it up for a TV series. And even though it was the #1 show in 120 global streaming markets, it launched at the beginning of COVID. And a plague show launching at the beginning of COVID. My timing.
It so did. 2019.
So they canceled my ass real quick. And so now the star of the show, Ian Somerhalder from Vampire Diaries, he and I are working with a producer buddy of ours on a new, much grittier version of V-Wars that goes deeper into what the book's about, which is racism, intolerance, and addiction. And the show was good, and I have to my first TV show. Of course, I love it, but at the same time, I thought it could have had a much deeper impact. More bite, as I like to say, and that's what we're doing with the next one. Which, if we manage to sell this next one's going to be kick ass.
I got 3 questions I want to ask you, and I'm gonna do this one, and then I'm gonna bring the other 2 in later on at some point in time. Because you mentioned something, which this me low key being sarcastic. So you say as a grown man, you had some toys in front of you and some books, and you was watching some cartoons, doing some research.
Yeah.
What you get ready to do? That you say that's what you was doing.
Yeah.
And my goodness, look how successful with that tactic.
Well, look at what you guys have behind you. Look what I have behind me. I got something. I don't know. I'm trying to be politically correct. It says, you just don't feel that what you just said is still being done today. So you said it just made me feel good. Now I know why you are who you are. Now the second question, because Mr. Ray Smith is in the building. He wanted me to ask you personally. So I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna ask you on behalf of Mr. Ray Smith, because you kind of alluded to it. Sure.
Probably a stupid question based on what you just said. Would you? I'm the messenger, please. Please, I'm the messenger. I'm the messenger. Because I heard what you just said. Would you write Black Panther comic book again if the offer was presented to you?
In a heartbeat.
Okay, Mr. Smith, you got your answer.
But here's the thing is, they're not going to ask me, and I agree with their reasoning on it. When I was, Christopher Priest had been doing, he rebuilt that comic, and then Reggie Hudlin came in and did some great work, and they were planning to get another black writer after that, which makes sense because, there are so many characters in comic book histories that speak to, white kids growing up. Most of the black characters back then were somebody's sidekick or their comic relief. Black Panther was the first actual he was nobody's sidekick. He was the king of his own nation. Most people who see the movies and don't read the comics don't realize he was also a genius scientist on the level with Reed Richards and Hank Pym and everyone else. And he didn't take shit from anyone. He was this powerful character. So I was surprised when they asked me, and there's a little story behind why they asked me. And since the movie came out and did so well, the only writers they've been hiring for Black Panther are black, and I totally agree with that, because this is the iconic black superhero. Without Black Panther, not only would we not have had some of the other black superheroes that we have, we wouldn't have had racism as a conversation within the comic book and pop culture world. The importance of the character can't be understated. So, like when the first movie came out, and I'd go to Barnes and Noble, they'd have these end caps with all the graphic novels. Mine were usually not on there. And as frustrating as that is in terms of sales, they wanted all the black writers of Black Panther represented, and I totally get it. Yes, if they asked me and the opportunity came up, sure, I would do it. But it's such an important thing, from my perspective, and I'm, obviously not black, but from my perspective, it's such an important thing to the kids who are growing up knowing that black writers, black artists are telling a story about a powerful black character, that is something for them to own and aspire to.
Well,
so
no problem. I totally understand where you're coming from, but let me say this: as somebody who, you know, read from Christopher Priest, read Reginald Hudlin, because to me it's a testament to you as a writer. I had to actually go back and realize that the writers had changed. My biggest thing when it comes to writers, and like I said, I understand what you're saying. I understand what Marvel is doing. To me, I think Judd Hirsch, who was on Different World back in the day or whatever, and he tried to write, you know, character, Batwing, Africa, and everything like that. And he struggled with it. He admitted that he struggled with it. And I understood, because you got to be a part of it or go embrace it all in. You can't be halfway in and halfway out. And that's regardless of whether or not, whatever demographic that you're writing about. I appreciate the fact that when you took over, one, I couldn't tell, but two, you didn't ignore what the previous writer did, that being Reginald Hudlin. You built on what he did, and then when you speak to T'Challa's intelligence, his IQ, I just want those that are rocking with us this evening to know it was you that gave us shadow physics. It was you that gave us Io as the Dora Milaje battle. That was you. That was you who gave us the Midnight Angels, and it was you who gave us, fleshed it out, more so than what we got in Deadliest of the Species, Shooty's Bloodlust, something that has not been touched since Claws of the Panther. So I just want to say to you, on behalf of all the Black Panther fans out there, thank you. I get it. I understand it, why they doing it, but this is an overused term, phrase, whatever. You definitely invited to the barbecue.
Thank you. I'll bring you. I guess it would probably help the viewers if I explained why they picked me. So here's the thing: I had been hired by Marvel. Axel Alonso, who was the editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time, had read one of my novels, Patient Zero, which is a spec ops action thriller dealing with zombies. You know, it's first of a series. Now there's 14 of them. Just got optioned for television the other day. I can't tell you who, but I can guarantee you know this director. You know. Anyway, Reggie and I became pretty good friends when I was there. We talk a lot. I loved his run on Black Panther. I had explained to him that it was one of my favorite characters of all time. And I was doing an interview on a New York radio station. I think I was working on Marvel Zombies Return at the time, and they asked me, why, the question was, who's your favorite Marvel character and why? And I said Black Panther, and they said, well, that's not the answer you usually get from a white guy. And I was like, here's why. So the backstory, which is not a pleasant backstory. I grew up in a neighborhood in Philadelphia called Kensington, which is widely regarded even to this day as one of the most racist neighborhoods in the country. And Pennsylvania, a lot of folks don't realize, has more KKK groups than any other state. And my father was in the KKK. So he was not a good guy. He was a career criminal, child abuser. There was nothing good you can say about him except that he's gone now, But, really, I can't think of a good thing I would want to say about that person. So I wasn't allowed to own books as a kid. I used to hide my books over my grandmother's house, but I was allowed to have comics because my father didn't consider them of any value. And my favorite comic was Fantastic Four. First comic I ever bought was Fantastic Four comic. And I started collecting, going to back issue stores, and getting all the back issues. When the character of Black Panther was introduced in Fantastic Four, it was such a jarring moment for me because everything my father had told me about what qualities a Black person could have in terms of intelligence and integrity and all this stuff. Imagine the life lessons a KKK member gives to their children. You get the idea of what kind of environment, right? But then there's this Black Panther character, and I was a big fan of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby because they were talking some pretty edgy stuff even back then. Stuff that DC was not touching. So I showed the comic to my dad, and I said, well, you said this about black guys, but what? And he took the comic and ripped it up and belted me, and that was the end of the conversation. I went out and bought another copy of it. So a few years later, I took that comic. It was actually 1970. I was 12. I took one of the other comics. I was going to middle school at that point, 7th grade. It was the first school I'd ever, grade school. There were no people of color at all. The first person of color I ever met was in middle school. It was the writer L.A. Banks, who sadly has passed a while ago, and she and I she walked over to me and said, "You look weird. We're going to be friends." It was the first conversation I ever had with somebody of color, right? And I took a Black Panther comic to the librarian because since I couldn't have books at home, I would go to the library all the time. And I said, "My father just hates this comic. Can you give me some idea of why?" And she said, "Well, that particular issue, I forget, it was Fantasy 471 or something like that, or 117 rather, or something like that. It was the one where T'Challa is arrested in what passes for South Africa in the Marvel universe, and
119, I think it is.
It was somewhere in there, 119. So Johnny Storm and the Thing go and break him out. Well, and the librarian said, "Well, that comic's about apartheid." And I'm like, "Well, what's apartheid?" And she said, "Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions." She said, "Have you ever heard of the Jim Crow laws?" I'm like, "No, who's Jim Crow?" And she says, "Okay, have you ever heard of Martin Luther King?" And I said, "Yeah, he was this bad guy, this criminal. My father had a big party when he died." And she said, "Sit down. We're going to have a very long conversation." So she told me a lot of the realities of civil rights movement, of racism, about apartheid, and who Martin Luther King was. And later on, I got to meet and get to know John Lewis, and I told him this story too. And he hugged me, and we cried together. It was crazy. Anyway, so that comic, the presence of that character, and the fact that by then he was in the Avengers, and everyone in Marvel seemed to be using the character, kind of started splitting me off from my father. And the more I talked to my librarian and start reading Langston Hughes and W.E.B. Du Bois and so on, at 12 years old, I love my librarian, by the way. She brought me out of that shadow. So this was the story I was telling on the radio. And next day I get a call from Reggie. He said, I don't know if you heard the rumors, but I'm stepping down as a writer in Black Panther. And I said, "No, I hadn't heard. That's horrible." He said, "Yeah, I got 6 more issues to do, and I want you to take the comic after me." And I laughed. I thought I was joking because it just was so absurd an offer. Like I was like, "Yeah, that would be great." But he said, "No, I'm serious." He said, I talked to Axel Alonso. We talked to the publisher. We want you to be the next writer on Black Panther. And I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "That radio interview, T'Challa saved your life too. He is the father figure you didn't have at home, a comic book character. And anyone who doesn't think comics are important should really pay attention to that statement. A comic book character was my male role model. That was insane." So what Reggie did is he said, "Look, I'm going to be ending my run, and we want to do a bit of a twist." And he said, "Axel and I both know that you've been martial arts your whole life, and that you spent the last 35 years teaching women self-defense. So here's the deal: we're going to have T'Challa get injured and unable to be the Panther for a while. We're going to step Shuri up." And I said, "Well, isn't Shuri like the Lindsay Lohan of Wakanda? She's the one that's always getting in trouble, the party girl. Christopher Priest really, had really made her not a heroic character." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You've taught women to come out of their shell and be tough. Do it with Shuri." I'm like, holy shit. So what we did is his last run, the Deadliest of the Species, in that run, Moreland is attacking Wakanda. And what Reggie says is, "Look, we got a Shuri storyline in here that starts small and gets bigger toward the end. I'll write the rest of the stuff. You write," he said, "ghostwrite." I got paid for it. I got a special thank you on the book, by the way. But he says, "You write the Shuri run to set up your run, so that by the end of your run, and the shared run, you'll step in and be Shuri's writer." So I actually got to put her in the Black Panther comic. And, I created a team for her. I worked out how. It's funny, even when you look at the comic and you see the fighting techniques, I actually worked out a fighting system for Shuri and photographed all the moves with one of my assistants and I. And we gave it to the artist. And so all of her moves are actual good combat moves that would work for a woman of her height with maybe a little extra physical power.
Hasbro, Marvel Legends be tripping. We be trying to get stuff and everything like that. And Mr. Smith, my brother D Real, we collect Action Force, whatever, Valorverse, and this is Flea. Like I know who Bobby Valor said he was, but this is our designated Flea. So we just want you to know we got our custom character, Flea from your run right here. We got that.
That is bizarre and awesome. I love it.
We just want to let you know that. Wait, hold on, because I don't want you to like
bizarre and awesome.
We don't want you to think that we don't appreciate what y'all got going on and everything like that. So yeah, we just want you to know we representing your run. We representing your run.
That's amazing. Oh wow.
Yeah, I was not gonna have.
Yeah, we're in there.
That's from this. It's from Claws of the Panther.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, sir. Look at you. Look at you.
Yes, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We try and flesh out our Wakanda. I like Flea. I do. I ain't seen him in a minute. So
one of my they haven't used them since, which is sad. I created a whole team for them. They haven't used them.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Other elements I created are being used. Like I created Shadow Physics. I created the Midnight Angels, which were a spec ops group within the Dormology. They've changed it for the movie in that Midnight Angels is a special armor that they wear. Yeah, there we go. And I also created the character of Anika, who is the Dormology general.
That's what I said. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. It is Anika. Yes.
And I have an actual Anika bobblehead, which is one of my most prized possessions. My first official character based on one of mine. And and my son and I were invited to the premiere, the Wakanda Forever premiere. And we had no idea. They didn't tell any of the creators how much of our stuff they used in the movie. So I'm sitting there, just happy that Shuri's the Panther. And I knew, from the coming attractions, it's Namor, and I put her up against Namor in, I think, my third issue of when I was doing it myself. And then I see the Midnight Angels, I see Anika, and I'm like, holy crap. And the cast is sitting right behind us, like 5 rows behind us. And, later on, meeting, Michaela Cole, who played Anika, meeting the Queen herself. Oh, my God. Let's just say that meeting that cast was a life-changing moment. And I don't think my son has recovered from meeting Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I can understand that. I can.
Dude, he was pretty dazzled about that. It was a hell of an event. And so there's a part of me that is always going to be in shock about this, because no matter where I am in my career, I'm still a professional nerd. I mean, that is my designation. I'm a nerd, and I'm proud of it. I was a nerd in high school, but luckily I was 6'4" and a secondary black belt when I was in 10th grade, so nobody messed with me for being a nerd.
Some of them had to actually go play football.
That's what I'm talking about. I was a nerd and I boxed. I was a nerd. I did Kenpo, so I'm like whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna read the comic books.
Yeah. By the way, I wrote a Kenpo textbook too.
Did you?
I have a friend. It's not available for the public. It's called Counter-Strike Kenpo. There's a buddy of mine who owned a couple of Kenpo schools in Philadelphia, and he wanted a training manual for like a history and technique manual. So just as I did with the judo textbook, I didn't teach judo, but a friend of mine did. Good teacher, not a good writer. So I went up writing the books for them, and about a dozen other martial arts books, textbooks for my classes, and then some mass market stuff. But
so you like writing. You like writing, that's in you. You say you're a professional nerd. You're a professional writer. You enjoy writing. You like the whole process of it.
there's no part of writing I don't like. And the whole thing about writing is that's the only thing I've technically ever wanted to do. Even when I was a little kid, before I could read and write, I was telling stories with toys. So I always want to be a writer. But in high school, I was in high school right after Watergate. So all of my writer buddies, we all wanted to be the investigative journalist that broke the big story and tore down the corrupt, whatever.
Woodward and Bernstein.
Yeah, so I actually I wanted to be both of them. I went to Temple University on a journalism scholarship, and I did nonfiction for most of my life. I didn't even go near fiction until I was in my late 40s. My first novel came out when I was 48, and I'm 66 now, and I'm 2 weeks away from finishing my 51st novel.
We still got time, D. We still got some time.
We do.
Oh well, I'm looking for marketing and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? To get because I've been sitting on manuscripts. So
I mean, that's a conversation we can continue even after this, because if you are looking for some advice on the biz, I'm more than happy. The idea. Here's the thing about publishing is a lot of people talk about how it's competitive and it's backstabbing. It's not. There is a component that does that. But most of the writing world is very, very mutually supportive, and we need more talent in the business. The more good writers we have, the more good books get published, the more readers will attract. Rising tide lifts all boats. So if you guys are writers, we need to have conversations and see if maybe I can give you some advice, help you move along a little bit.
I know he's wrote a book, and I know I got one. But you familiar with the artist Zane?
Yeah.
So. It's along those lines. It came out in 2000. It came out like 2009, but it's along the lines of Zane and what's the
poetry, but
well, the thing about poetry, I read poetry aloud for about half an hour every day before I write fiction, and I have a poetry anthology coming out at the end of this year. It's a little interesting. This is an interesting one because we cover. The concept is called shadow and verse, right? I definitely want to read your poetry. The concept is called shadow and verse. What we did is I invited 90 of my creative friends, actors, writers, comic book people, audiobook readers, and so on, to pick a public domain poem, something that's in the, out there, Shakespeare, Poe, Lovecraft, Frost, Langston Hughes, everybody. Pick a poem that is public domain that deals with darkness, and then write commentary about it. So, I asked Neil Gaiman and R.L. Stine and Harold Perrineau, who's, I don't know if you've watched the show From.
Yeah. And his work on Oz and The Best Man. Yes.
Yeah. He's a buddy of mine. So he wrote stuff. 90 people wrote commentary. And then I had 4 mental health professionals come in and write essays about darkness. The book comes out in October, and it's the whole 100% of all the profits go to provide scholarships for emerging creatives. That was the plan. And, it's funny because, people see the lineup, everyone from Neil Gaiman to Tanana Reeve-Du. I mean, everyone's in this. And they're like, how'd you get all those people? I'm like, basically, they're my drinking buddies. They're the people I party with at events. And they're the people.
You just took me back to poetry class because I could have swore that was an assignment you just gave out. Wait, didn't I?
It's a pretty good assignment though to take poems that you love and write your commentary about it. Helps deep understanding of the poem, and then it actually helps you then unlock what you need to unlock so you can write poetry. I've just started publishing poetry. I've only had 9 published so far. Mine poems, not books. And I have such great respect for poets, spoken word writers, and lyricists, because there is so much that can be said in so few words. And as a novelist who writes long books, I envy that brevity, that ability to get to the heart of something in a few words. That's magic to me.
So I got to ask you, because you said you like a lyricist. We had this thing just take place just recently. I don't know if you were paying attention to it, the little beef that was going on between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if you was paying attention to that.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Who would you consider to be the lyricist out the two? I'm just going to ask that question. I ain't asking nothing else.
Here's the thing. I know their music more than I know who the credits on their songs. So if I had to just guess, and it would be pure guesswork, I'm leaning toward Kendrick, but I could be wrong because I don't know.
No. That's an opinion. We all got him.
It's the right one.
The dude
it's the right one.
The guy that you picked, he did win. What award did he win, D?
Oh, what you say?
What award did Kendrick win?
Oh, he won a Pulitzer.
Yeah. No. They don't just hand those out.
I don't think you went wrong picking the guy that won the Pulitzer Prize. I don't know if you did.
Yeah.
That.
Oh, that's a level of credibility that's hard to shake, you know.
Jonathan, I have a question, and the question is coming from the comments.
Okay.
Would you be good doing Star Wars comics and TV shows? Now, before you answer, I want you to know that's from a longtime commenter who is definitely young.
Okay.
So now, bearing that in mind, go.
All right. Well, first, let me just preface my answer by saying there is a category within writing called media tie-in writing, where you write stories in worlds like Star Wars and Supernatural and so on. I'm the president of that organization. I've done a ton of media tie-in work. So yes, if the opportunity came to write Star Wars comics or work on a Star Wars show, I would trample people to do that. I've been a Star Wars fan since 1977. I was a theater rusher when Star Wars came out. First Star Wars came out. And I love, the shows run hot and cold. The movies run hot and cold, but I'm a Star Wars fan anyway. Just like Star Trek runs hot and cold, but I'm a Star Trek fan too.
Here.
Yeah, and I might be doing a project that John Boyega's involved in. That I can't get to.
We're going to have to talk, Jonathan. We really going to have to talk.
Man.
Yeah, I love, and I have a bunch of friends who write Star Wars stuff, novels and so on. And it's such a fun license because there's so much you can do with it. And I'm tonight. I'm going to check out the first couple episodes of The Acolyte, see if it's any good.
You know what? Without talking about that, can we talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. I'm just real quick. I'm gonna hit it and quit it. Now, you've been a Star Wars fan since 1977. I've been a Star Wars fan since 1977. Okay.
I'm not gonna do that. No.
You were probably about 20,
19.
21, around 19. There when you first experienced Star Wars. You know how I know that? Because I know I'm 10 years younger than you.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Your mind's been programmed to accept a certain level of Star Wars.
To a degree, yes, but I like some of the other things they've done with it. Like I was a big fan of Andor.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You absolutely loved it in the prequels when the lightsaber speed picked up.
Yes, I did. The fight choreography was so much better in those movies. It's funny because the guy who played Anakin in the second and third prequel movie almost starred in V-Wars. He came that close to starring in it, but they wanted to go with Ian Somerhalder instead. So, that would have been a fun connection. But, in any case,
Hayden Christensen
was
almost in V-Wars.
Yep, he was almost the star of V-Wars.
We ain't seen him in a minute.
I don't know what he's. I mean, he was in Ahsoka. He was in that.
Yeah, he was. Okay. You blink and you miss him.
Yeah, but I think he'll probably be back for season 2 if they do a season 2 because they left a lot, hanging there with her having visions of an idealized version of Anakin as her master rather than the version of what he became.
I would definitely like
story to tell. There's story to tell. That's a good question.
Yeah. Now, another question I have always had, Swamp Thing. Because I know they were asking about, but Swamp Thing. Tell me your ideal story for Swamp Thing.
It's funny. Now, just a little side note. I'm a Marvel guy like 80% of the time.
Okay, let's go Man Thing.
Oh no, I can do both because I mean clearly they're based on one another. You know,
Yes.
for Swamp Thing, I would love to do something. I don't know if they've done this, but I would love to do something where the Swamp Thing character runs into some of the New Gods characters, especially like Orion, who has that, you know, the double personality. You know, that would be an interesting story, depending on how he reacts to which personality is present. And I love the New Gods. I would love to be able to play with those characters. So I would like to see that. And I'd also like to see, I don't know if they've ever done it, a swamp thing, and I forget the name of the demon, but the demon character. I forget the actual name of the
Etrigan.
Yeah, Etrigan. Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to see. I would like to see a story where two of them are together. Now, if I was doing Man Thing for Marvel, I would definitely like to write something in the Marvel Knights thing, because Man Thing has some cool his own back thing. You know, whoever knows fear burns at the Man Thing's touch and all that, which again creates a different, you know, storytelling opportunity. But I would think with Man Thing, with the Marvel thing, I would definitely like to do it as part of a Midnight Sun story, because that allows it to bring in T'Challa or Shuri, you know, depending on who's sitting on the throne at the time and who's out in the field kicking ass. You know, bring that version in, and it looks like, you know, they just hired a director, I believe, with Marvel to do a Midnight Suns movie. We don't yet know which character is going to be in there, but after that, the Man Thing stuff in the Werewolf by Night thing they did, which by the only good part of that show. The Man Thing was the only good part of that show. But if they took that version of the Man Thing and put him there with Blade and with a couple other characters, that'd be awesome. And I would love to write it.
Let me ask you a question. Speaking of writing, because we've had some stuff come along recently where fan groups have voiced their displeasures about this, voiced their displeasures about that, and a writer, I think George R.R. Richardson. I'll make sure
George R.R. Martin.
George R.R. Martin. Thank you. That's why we got my big brother. George R.R. Martin have come out. How do you feel in regards to you're a writer? And we already talked about how you honor what came before and built upon that.
Sure.
As a writer, how would you feel, or how do you feel in regards to liberties being taken? We understand modernization, adaptations, and everything like that, but how do you feel about to the point where the creation of the writer is no longer the creation of the writer?
Well, I'm kind of mixed about that. I don't like 100% straight adaptations. I know that version of the story. I want twists and turns. And this goes back to what I was saying, you know, about my Joe Ledger character, which just got optioned for TV.
Oh,
very cool!
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. I mean, days ago. The guy who optioned it is the right guy, and we had this long talk about, you know, what we would do for the show. And one of the things we agreed on is we wouldn't want to do the normal thing where, you know, there's 14 Joe Ledger novels out so far. We wouldn't want to do a book per season, because the books are out there, and I don't want fans to get pissed off that the TV show is taking liberties, because that can really annoy fans. What we'd rather do is pick up where Joe Ledger is now, you know, as if it's between the novels, and whatever new bit of science or threat or whatever is going on in the headlines, grab that and build a story around that for the show. So it allows the showrunner and the writer's room to tell original stories, and hopefully I would be involved in that to some degree too. But at the same time, my version of it already exists. So I don't need to be in competition with the TV show. I want the readers to have the TV show. We just launched a backer kit for a Joe Ledger graphic novel. Backer kits like Kickstarter. We just launched that 2 days ago. So there's going to be a Joe Ledger comic book. Joe Ledger appeared in the V-Wars comic books. And now we're going to have a TV series, and all of them are going to be slightly different takes on it, so that there are different glimpses of Joe Ledger's life, as if the books are telling this part of the story, the TV is telling that part of the story, but there was all the same character. And
I see what you're saying.
That's one last thing out there. One of the things we did is over the last couple of years, since I have so many writer friends who are fans of the Joe Ledger stuff, Brian Thomas Schmidt and I edited 2 anthologies where we asked other writers to come in and write Joe Ledger stories. And, we got to see wildly different takes on the characters. In fact, one of the stories was written by, do you guys know who Maurice Broadus is?
Yes.
Afrofuturist. He partnered with actor Wayne Brady because they're both fans of the books, and they did a story for it. And now Wayne and I become really good friends, and he wants, I'm going up to his house in a couple of weeks. We're going to spend some time, and he's going to pick my brain about writing. I like the fact that each of these writers brings a different take and comes in it from a different perspective. Some come in from Joe, some come in from this character or that character. Scott Sigler, a very funny story about my hero's cat. It was a hilarious story. Trying to protect the dog, the combat dog, from killer rat drones. It was great.
And it's kind of like when you go back to what you were saying before in regards to like how you have the president that you're over writing Star Wars. You have a whole bunch of people writing about that character within that universe, different takes. I like that. It's kind of like, different perceptions and everything like that, telling it from different points of view. No, that's that old school terminology. That's fly. That's fly.
I don't think I've ever been accused of being fly before.
You have now, dadgummit.
One of those kids that always liked sharing my toys, because most of our toys were stuff we made anyway. We were all poor. So we'd make stuff and we'd share it. But and if one of us got like the old-fashioned G.I. Joe for Christmas or something, it would be 2 weeks at this guy's house and a month in that guy's house, and we'd all be borrowing our toys. So with media tie-in, sometimes I have to stick pretty close to the story, like with the Wolfman. They hired me to do the novelization of the Wolfman. It was my first New York Times bestseller. Here's a weird thing about that. They didn't actually let me see the movie. They don't let any of us see the movies before we write the novelizations. They just give us the script. So we don't know how the actors are going to act, how they're going to inflect. We don't know what costumes they're wearing most of the time. We don't know anything. So when I got the script, which is a really good script, I had to do a ton of research in order to write a novel. So I did research and I wrote a Gothic novel about the Wolfman. And it wound up winning, awards. And I was like, holy crap, I did not see that coming. And I fell in love with media tie-in. Since then, I've done John Carter of Mars and Hellboy and True Blood and Wizard of Oz. Actually, my Wizard of Oz story made me ugly cry. It's a real quick story. I'll tell you why. I was asked by an editor friend of mine if I would like to write a Wizard of Oz story. And this was early in my career. I had 3 novels out this time. And I'm like, my first idea was I was going to take the Tin Man, give him the heart of a serial killer, have him go on a rampage with his axe, which would be a fun story. And they wrote that someday, but it doesn't really fit the audience who reads that story. So I always like in the books, the winged monkeys were not evil. They were enslaved by the witch and forced to do her bidding, but they were not evil. They had a whole culture. They could speak. They had a language. So I did a story about a little winged monkey girl whose wings were too small for her to fly, and she went out and bought magic traveling shoes to take her all the places her wings wouldn't go. Even as I'm writing, I'm like, because it was just so far out of my comfort zone. So what happened is, after the story came out, there was a lot of reviewers who picked that story out and mentioned it. I got a letter from the estate of L. Frank Baum, the guy who created The Wizard of Oz. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I am going to get fried by these people. And what they said was, we really enjoyed your story. We felt that it caught the gentleness and magic of the original Wizard of Oz stories. We are adding it to the official chronology of Oz. It is now forever.
That's big.
Now, let me make sure I'm understanding what you just said to me and the Rock With Me Nation audience. You said you wrote something that was an IP, okay? Yep. And it wasn't part of the mythos. It wasn't part of canon.
No.
And the people who own this IP is what contacted you. You didn't call them. They reached out to you.
Yep.
Okay. And said, Jonathan, we want to add your shit to our mythos. Is that what you just said?
That is what happened. And I am not ashamed to say I cried buckets when that happened, because it was aside from the fact that, I grew up with Wizard of Oz, those things are so important to me. They're like legendary things. And now I have a tiny, tiny part of that. I'm included in that. It was so unexpected, because when you do this stuff, we write the stories in our head. We're professional daydreamers, right? We just write the weird stuff that comes into our head. We don't know what it's going to do when it's out there. Sometimes you put something out, you put your heart and soul into it, and it gets no love. Sometimes you do something that's so far out of your comfort zone, you think, well, at least I tried, and then you get something like that happens. As I mentioned, I think before we started this, my life has never been boring. It has not always been fun, but it's never been boring. There's weird stuff that's happened, and I am grateful every day of my life that this stuff happens. The guy who invited me into the anthology, he was as shocked as I was when we got that letter, and he's like, he had me read it to him like 9 times, Wow. Nuts.
Wow. I tell you what, listening to your life, like, yeah, folks needed to be a part of this live tonight. They definitely needed to hear your words and everything like that. I had to turn away earlier when you were talking about what Reginald Hutton said to you in regards to your father and what the character meant to you. And that's one of the things that touches me. My father wasn't in my life. My grandfather wound up raising me after my mother passed. So when I think about those young men, those boys who teared up and everything like that, it makes the day worthwhile. It makes what we do over here in regards to keeping the character's memory alive. Writers such as yourself, because not just you and the wonderful work that you did, but also David List. As I was talking to Mr. Smith today, we go straight from Hutland to Coates, and I'm like, I don't know how we're doing that, because it's some people in there we need to be acknowledging first before we even talk about an intergalactic empire. Can we talk about the deadliest of the species? Can I get Power, Doom War? I got Claws of the Panther, and I got him in Hell's Kitchen. Can we talk about that first before we get over here? So,
yeah, David did a pretty good job with it too. David's an old friend of mine. I was delighted when they offered it to him. It's weird because back then, Black Panther was the most frequently canceled comic Marvel ever had.
Where did y'all hear that?
Oh, you guys mentioned, yeah, the part of it, the reason for it was so frustrating. If T'Challa had been a Black American, the comic probably would have lasted longer. He was African, which means and the bulk of the readers were white kids who didn't care about anyone who's not from America, especially a Black person not from, so, and a lot of writers really tried with that. I mean, I fell back in love with comics because of Christopher Priest's run on it. Mm-hmm. I had stopped reading comics for a while, and then he started doing them. I'm like, holy crap, this is what Marvel should have been doing all along. Give it to writers and say there are no brakes on the car. You stay alive by driving fast. Go. That's what works.
Now, can I ask you a question in that regard? Do
Sure.
you think that continued exposure of a character is what lifts that character's stock, so to speak? I mean, because we see Spider-Man all the time. If we didn't see Spider-Man all the time, would Spider-Man still be a flagship character? I mean, a lot of times we ask for characters, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but a lot of times we ask for characters to be seen more and be seen in a different light. And that's a lot of what me and Theo are always talking about with Black Panther. Okay, he had that run on Jungle Action with Don McGregor. Phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Art by Billy Graham. Phenomenal. I'm still in love with the curves of Monica Lynn in those books. You know what I mean? And then Jack Kirby did that that series, I think it was like 77, 78, with King Solomon's Frog, 6 Million Year Man, all of that stuff. And then there were the 4-issue series. Then there was the Marvel Presents, and all of those were broken up. You didn't get all of that consecutively. If you had gotten all of that consecutively, I'm confident, or at least I feel like he would be a more popular character than what he is now.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's one of the reasons that like I had a conversation about this with Stan Lee about 9 years ago, and he said that one of the things that they wrestled with was calling the character the Black Panther, because I mean originally it was the Coal Tiger, Coal Panther, the Panther. They tried Black Leopard after a while because of the political, similarities in the name.
That same storyline you were talking about earlier.
The character like Falcon was very popular because he was Captain America's sidekick, and he was Captain America and the Falcon, which was bold to put him on the cover, but still. Stan said that if they had not called him Black during the Civil Rights era, which was the reason he did that, the comic might have lasted longer at the time. But there was pushback on the title, and yeah, I mean, they put him in Avengers in the hopes that his presence there would lift him up, and a lot of the writers marginalized him in there. And if they or they would give him like a vibranium gadget of the week, he would save the world by some vibranium gadget. It's like, how about exploring the depth and integrity of a character who's a king and the champion of his own people? How about we go there?
Let me ask you this question, because
Arthur and Lancelot at the same time without the moral ambiguity.
I like that.
Let me ask you this question, because my brother alluded to it as well earlier when he talked about exposure. We feel like there's another component to that as well, in regards to fan bases. What I've said, by and large, is we're first as far as them what they're wanting to do with the character, and there being a fan base to fight back against that.
Yeah.
Would you say that fan bases play a part in keeping a character around as well? Like, because we say united voices are louder voices, but would you say that's a component that's needed?
Yeah, and especially now in the social media age, because we can do conversations like this. Back then, the three of us wouldn't even meet. I don't know where if you guys live in the same area, but generally, a lot of people wouldn't meet because there was no way to meet. And growing up, there was nobody in my neighborhood who read any Black Panther stuff. All my friends, their fathers were in the KKK. There was one big group. There was just none.
I've seen such a, how can I put it? Well, I don't also. So when the character went through what the character went through on screen, we noticed something in regards to how the character was being written. And thus you had fans of the character that were fans of the character prior to his debut in the MCU. So you had those fans coming together. We've noticed, and I don't think it's by accident, that Marvel Comics has definitely, I don't want to say pivoted, but they understand that the character means something. I'll say that they understand maybe more so now than they ever did that character means something to a plethora of people across a variety of spectrum of demographics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they did it right too. They introduced him in Civil War, or was it Civil War?
Yeah.
And it was a perfect introduction. You see him first as the Prince of Wakanda. You see him with his father, and you see the love between father and son. You see the integrity in their conversations. We see his grief. So we establish the person in that film so beautifully. And then when he puts on the suit, we're like, holy shit! It was one of the best, possibly the best character introduction I've ever seen. And then when they did the first Black Panther movie, the pump was prime, because all of the viewers who loved Civil War, and Civil War was a great movie. It was probably the best comic book movie, all the way up to that fight at Berlin airport where you had everybody in it. I was born for that moment. and so there was no chance that they weren't going to do a Black Panther movie. But they also made I was and at the premiere, at the after party of the premiere, I got to talk to Ryan Coogler about this. I said, I'm actually glad, even though I'm white, I'm actually glad none of the other Marvel superheroes were in the Black Panther movie. If they were, even if they were minor supporting characters, it would have been perceived as they gave him the boost. And what they proved is the character has so much depth and complexity, he doesn't need a wingman. He is what you need for that role. And I don't think Black Panther's ever going to leave our cultural consciousness now, because so many people have seen the character, seen those movies, and have fallen in love. And I mean, you got the picture behind you, Theo, that Chad Boseman. I mean, I don't know if they could have done better casting than that. He was perfect in the role. Now, I do think they should recast, and I'll explain before anybody stabs me.
No, you're not going. No, you're not.
Not over here.
Not over here.
Not over
here.
Here's my reasoning. A lot of, I mean, and we all talked about this at the after party, because Chadwick was the king. He was exactly that role, even off screen. I mean, the guy was going around to cancer hospitals to talk to kids while he was dying of cancer, and nobody knew. He didn't complain. He didn't whine. He didn't want pity. He was literally heroic, right? So, where the hell was I going with this? Because I got Chad Boseman. So the reason I think they can recast him is now Marvel's doing all this multiverse stuff. There are variants everywhere. And not all the I mean, they're talking about a variant, like they had a variant of Reed Richards in Doctor Strange. So it's not the same guy who's going to play him. They did that for the fans. It's not the same guy who's going to play him in the upcoming movie. So why can't there be another actor, another good quality actor playing T'Challa, who then comes to our reality?
I'm gonna tell you what I said. So, just being sensitive. You're older than me and everything like that. Being sensitive to the passing, losing people and everything like that. George Reed, Christopher Reed. I bawled like a baby when I found out that Chadwick Boseman passed.
Yeah.
So we, my thing was take a break. Don't talk about anything like let's pump the brakes, give everybody opportunity to mourn. But then stuff that you tell us about Chadwick Boseman, let's show the world who Chadwick Boseman was aside from the character of T'Challa. Let's show you why he was so special. And myself and D-Real and quite a few others of us, we've had to go out there and find stuff that folks still can't tell you about Chadwick Boseman, even though they say they love him. I'm like, if you love him, you go out there and find out what's going on, because you ain't butt hurt about somebody you don't know. No, there's a connection there. That's why you butt hurt. You deserve to go find out. A lot of people don't know he graduated with a degree in directing. They think it's acting. Well, when you look at the recast, my mind was, give me a movie bio first. Give me an actor that's going to play the role of Chadwick Boseman. Fans will see Chadwick Boseman in him. Give me about 2 more years after that movie biopic drops. I got from Reginald Hudlin. That's why I'm so excited to have you with us this evening. I got Deadliest of the Species from Reginald Hudlin. I could have had T'Challa in Black Panther 2 get injured right off the rip. We could substitute. It ain't got to be Dr. Doom. It could have been somebody else. Put him in that cryogenic chamber. Don't murk him. You can let Nakia play the role of Aurora if that's what you want to do. You can have her fulfill that role. Let's get Shorty, Black Panther 2, Deadliest of the Species. Give me some of that power. How the character impacted you, what Reginald Hudlin said to you, hey, this was your father. Black love, imagery, representation. We'd have got to see Nakia fighting for her man. She get pregnant, but she's married as opposed to being a single mother. But the recast thing, Mr. Maberry, I never knew why we didn't go all in. Because
it also robs the audience of T'Challa.
I never knew, even in the comic books, the Bozeman helicarrier flies around Wakanda right now. That's canon. So Chadwick Boseman is immortalized in the comics. He's not going nowhere. You're going to always think of that opportunity. You wrote it. You and Reginald Hudlin both. That was the perfect way to introduce a brand new actor as T'Challa. Would have made it acceptable. Would have made sense. If he gets hit in the face with an energy blast, of course he's going to look different because they're going to have reconstructive surgery.
Right. But my son and I had a conversation at the Black Panther premiere with two of the women who were playing Dora Milaje. The exact conversation, because there's so many ways you could have done it, and they thought it was going to be a dishonor to Chadwick. It's not. I think not doing it is dishonoring Chadwick Boseman. He created a perfect version of an iconic character and left it open for more. And now that Marvel's doing the multiverse stuff, let's just get over the conversation and get on with Black Panther.
I think if I just step away from T'Challa and I just knowing the man, learning the man, studying the man who said he wanted more, not less, the man who said his ideal representation would be like a Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12 type of movie. The man who talked about it's always one of us at a time when there needs to be 3 or 4 of us. I am so lost how we. Never mind.
Speaking, we're on the same.
Well, since we're on that same wavelength, it been floating around in the comments, and once again, it's the young buck. I'll go ahead and ask you about it. Okay, X-Men 97. Did you watch it?
No, I have not yet seen the new X-Men 97.
Okay,
it's I have a whole bunch of stuff to watch. I'm on book deadline, so I'm not watching anything right now.
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to go ahead and forego that conversation because you don't have a fair assessment of what went on. But,
well, if you invite me back, we can have that conversation.
But here, definitely. Anytime you want to come.
Yeah.
But here's something I want to ask you. Were you into 90s animation? Like the 90s Fantastic Four, and they did the episode with Keith David, and he played T'Challa, and they did that episode like it came right out of the comic book.
Yeah, I was very much into what they were doing in the 90s. They were doing comic book cartoons rather than cartoons with comic book characters, which is not the same thing. They were honoring the actual comics. They were playing to the fan base, as opposed to putting half an hour of people in tights punching each other. And the 90s really did a good job. And I actually don't know that the Marvel Cinematic Universe would exist if it hadn't been for the 90s cartoon shows, because they show that supporting characters can be huge breakouts in something like that. Test drive the character in an ensemble episode like they did with Black Panther. Put him in there. Let him shine, and everybody's going to want more.
Harlequin.
Hey, they said you're invited every week, Mr. Maberry.
Mr. Maberry, it's Jonathan, please.
Hey, you know what? I just want to make sure I wasn't being disrespectful, Jonathan.
I am not pretentious enough to want to be called Mr. Maberry.
Hey, Les, you ain't got to tell me for once. You ain't got to tell me.
We've learned so much from you this evening. It's crazy because when you leave, we're gonna be talking about you for about like 24, 48 hours. Like we just you're gonna be talking conversation, just letting you know right now.
And don't forget to email me about your book, by the way.
Oh,
absolutely. I have.
Oh, wait. Which you talking about?
I want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Listen. We will definitely do that. We will.
Cool.
Okay.
And also, one of the other things I do is I edit Weird Tales magazine, and which we, now 101 years old, and I did one other thing.
You talk about the old EC stuff.
No. Weird Tales was a pulp magazine back in the 20s and 30s. It's where Robert E. Howard or the Conan stories were written.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So I've been the editor of that now for a few years. And we include poetry in every issue. That's one of the things I love. I did my anthologies too. I always include poetry. So
really?
I'm always on Skype.
I am known as something of a spoken word poet around these here parts.
We can have conversations.
We don't have to do that. Listen, you're a busy dude, but you busy, and you don't mind helping other folks that want to be busy. We want to be busy like you.
That's one anecdote I do want to tell. While we're still here, is why I like helping other writers. Other than the fact that I consider myself a fairly social guy, generous. As much as I can be. When I was a kid, that same librarian, and this is why I think librarians are superheroes, by the way. This librarian, not only did she introduce me to, the whole concept of the tolerance and intolerance, question and so on. She was also the secretary for 2 clubs of professional writers, one that met in Philly and one that met in New York. The Philly group was known as the Hyborian Legion. It was Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter and all the guys who were writing the Conan stuff. This is 1970, right? The Conan, and Lancer was putting out all the Conan paperbacks. In fact, the book right behind me on the shelf over there is Conan the Wanderer, the first book I ever bought with my own money. So that's part of it. And then the group that met in New York that she would bring me up to was whenever there were enough genre novelists in New York, and that's where you used to go to launch your novels back in the 70s before the internet. They would have this one publisher would have a cocktail party. And the secretary, this librarian would bring me up. And so the first time I was there, I got introduced to Ray Bradbury and Richard Matheson and Harlan Ellison. They were just there to launch new books. And I didn't even know who Ray Bradbury was at the time. I was 12, so I can get a pass on this one. But the librarian said, and this is Ray Bradbury. And I'm like, oh, are you a writer too? There was laughter for about 30 minutes on this one. And Ray said, yeah, I've taken a swing at it once or twice. Mm-hmm. And then I found out who he was. He and Matheson, over the next 3 years, every time we go up, and if they were in town, they took time. They would bring me bags of books, not just their own stuff, but stuff all across the reading spectrum. Because one of their things was always know more than you're taught. So always read beyond your comfort zone, because you don't know what else is out there, and your mind should be open and not shut. Great advice. And there was no gain at all for these guys to help this hairy little 12-year-old, with what wanted to be a writer. There was no win for them other than, they felt that I could use the help. That was it.
Well, you know what? You continue their legacy. The legacy of writers, that's what it is. I get that. You see somebody with a passion for writing, you want to make sure the legacy of writers, especially in this day and age when the printed word is being taken less and less important. No, we need writers, and and everybody can't write. Everybody can't write, and everybody don't want to write. So,
but the people who do shouldn't have to keep hitting closed doors and speed bumps. I about 25 years ago, I created this thing called the Writers Coffee House, which is, we have it every. There are a bunch of them around the country. I run the San Diego one. Every month, we have a 3-hour free networking session. Writers come in. I don't care if they picked up a pencil that morning and wondered, what does this do? If you want to be a writer, you're a writer as far as we're concerned. Come and join us. We have a Facebook page too. Anybody can join that. But the idea is writers helping writers for no benefit other than to get more writers in the business, to get more people.
What's the name of this Facebook page again, Jonathan?
Well, the Writers Coffee House. And everyone is welcome. Also, if you go to my website, and easiest way to get there is if you spell my last name right, M-A-B. On my website, there's a page called Free Stuff for Writers. It has a query letter. I think one of my Captain America comic book scripts is up there, so you can see what a comic book script look like. There's all sorts of stuff that's free downloadable PDFs for writers. My buddy Chuck Wendig does a lot of the same stuff. He has free stuff up on his website. And that's, the idea is, if we can help writers not waste their time by making the mistakes that everyone makes because we don't know the answers. If we can give them some of the answers, then again, more writers will get into the biz, and that's a party. I mean, the more people who are doing this sort of stuff, the more fun it is for all of us. And since we writers are also, dedicated readers, if we can get more people out there telling their stories with every possible diverse point of view in terms of storytelling, that gives us more to read and expands our understanding of the world.
Well, I just joined Facebook.
Downside to that.
Yeah, I just joined Facebook.
Okay.
Oh.
That's what's up. That's what's up, sir. Real quick, I do a little fun segment where I kind of want to pick your brain, and you will be just fine in this because you are ensconced in nerddom.
All right.
Okay?
Yep. Hit me.
So now, even though you've written a novel called V Wars, vampires or werewolves, which one is cooler and why?
All right, I'm a werewolf guy from
yes, yes.
I kind of look, but I wrote 5 nonfiction books about the folklore of vampires and werewolves around the world throughout history. Every culture has different versions of them. My favorite version of werewolves is from Livonia. It's on the border of Poland. There's a type of werewolf up there called the Benedante. It means good walker. They claimed, their families, by the way, go back to like the Etruscan times, thousands of years old, these families. And they claimed that at night they would become werewolves and fight monsters on the side of heaven. That was their claim. One of them was even arrested by the Inquisition, and they tried to force him to say that he was actually, evil, and they couldn't break him. And the Inquisition was known for trying pretty hard. They couldn't break the guy.
Oh, yeah.
So they said, you must have the power of God on your side. They let him go. They even gave him a cool nickname, the Hound of God. Great nickname. So werewolves are definitely my favorite. Of vampires, there are a bunch of different vampire types. Sasabon is one of my favorite. He hangs from trees with claws and has iron teeth. The Vietnamese werewolf is cool. It's a head and entrails that tear itself out of a body, float around, suck life energy, and then return to the body in the morning. All these different kinds of vampires and werewolves out there. And what frustrates me is too many people in pop culture only rely on the versions of them that we see in movies. But here's the thing. Nowhere in folklore is a vampire afraid of a cross or sunlight. Nowhere in folklore is a vampire killed by a stake. Stakes were used to hold it down so they could be beheaded and have this thing called the ritual of exorcism. Nowhere in folklore is a vampire unable to enter a house unless invited. That was invented by Bram Stoker because in the first third of Dracula, he made the character so strong that by the time he got to England, he would just kill everyone. So we had to give him a limitation. And he was the one that came up with vampires being afraid of the cross because Bram Stoker was Irish Catholic. He figured the elements of his faith would be proof against evil. But sunlight, there's no, the only vampire afraid of sunlight is the Chinese Jingxia vampire. Every other vampire, sunlight's irrelevant. That became an issue in movies. In the 1922 silent film by F.W. Murnau called Nosferatu, they couldn't film the big expensive ending they were going to do, and because they were out of budget, half the crew had walked out. So the lighting guy, one of the few guys who hadn't split, said, "Hey, look, we've been shooting the vampire in darkness the whole time. Why don't we just make it that he can't abide the light and sunlight kills him in the morning?" And the director's like, "Sure, fine, whatever, let's do it." And now every movie and TV show has vampires afraid of sunlight. If people went back and writers especially went back and used the vampires from world culture, they're so much different. They're so much scarier. And the readers and viewers would not know what to expect because they don't know how to kill those kinds of vampires, which makes it more fun.
Even in Bram Stoker, Dracula's walking around in the daytime.
Yeah, and most people think Dracula was staked. Do you guys remember how Dracula died at the end of the book? He was stabbed with a Bowie knife and a kukri knife. He was stabbed to death at the end of the book. He was not staked. But we've seen so many of the movies, the stake is what we believe. So it's become like kind of a new folklore based on pop culture. I like the older folklore where the monsters are scarier.
You a horror student. Like, you're a horror fan for real.
Like, horror
for real. Like, folks don't need to try your gangster. Like, no.
My grandmother was I guess my version of the OG, horror person. She was born on Halloween, which makes her even cooler. And she believed in everything. She's kind of like the Luna Lovegood of old ladies. She believed in everything. And when I was a kid, she taught me all about the folkloric monsters from around the world. And when I wrote that folklore book, I did it kind of as a thank you to her, because she got me involved in horror and stuff. It's a shame she was not around to see the book. But so, yeah, I've been a horror guy from the jump. And we just had StokerCon, the Horror Writers Association conference last weekend. And I got to present an award. Tananarive Dew and I got to present an award together, and she's one of my favorites and also a friend. And then she got to win an award, the very first Black person to win Best Novel ever for the Stokers.
I got to ask you this question, right? So you are horror. You are a horror fan, horror expert. Blood Hunt. Blood Hunt. Have you been checking it out? I got to ask. It's supposed to be horror. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask you two questions.
Oh, hold on.
Might be a little tricky.
Don't forget.
Blood Hunt and Jeff Johns' Blackest Night.
Oh, Blackest Night, of course. But Blood Hunt, I haven't read yet, but I'm going to look it up.
Okay. It's right up your alley. It's hard.
Let me get your opinion, because I wait, hold on.
Who's doing the art on that?
I got to do it like this. Hold on.
Pepe Larraz.
They be like, Theo.
Thanks.
Hold on. Wait a minute.
Pepe Larraz and Jed McKay's right.
Lord have mercy, Jesus.
Oh, wow. There's a lot to catch up on.
The entire Blackest Night run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the best DC crossovers they did, and I thought it was a lot of fun.
That's what I wanted to ask you. What did you think about it?
It was fun. They took some risks. They made comic books scary, which comic books hadn't been scary for a while, and they kind of brought, because the character. What they did is they did what made zombie movies scary in the first place. Zombie movies got scary because the people who became zombies were your family and neighbors. And so when the superheroes started turning on one another, and so on, and everything is turning into this creature plague. You didn't know who's going to who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to survive, who's going to not. It actually gave you a chance to feel tension for characters who normally are going to survive. And this one, you weren't so sure. Plus, the artwork was great. The storytelling took a lot of risks. I'm a big fan.
Okay. I had to ask. I said, you know what? He's a horror fan. I got two horrors I want to ask him about.
Yep.
Okay. Well, when you come back on the show, I don't believe in saying if, we're gonna speak it into existence. When you come back on the show, we're gonna talk about Red Band. B, I got somebody knocking at the door. Go ahead, big bro.
Okay. Ooh, ouch. Don't mind if I do. Okay. Something I wanted to ask you about V Wars. Okay. The show. Okay. Now I know, it's a project and it's a project. Did you like watch it and like when you saw the whole thing, were you like, what was your whole okay?
It was surreal. First off, I got to go to the table read when the actors were first reading the scripts, and my wife and son and I got to go to Sudbury, Ontario, where they were filming it. So we got to be there for the first week of filming. The show, I was not involved in the creative process of the show at all until the last week. So I didn't see the episodes. I read the scripts, but I know they were changing the scripts as they were shooting. I didn't see the show until it actually aired, and Netflix has sent me a big gift basket with a bottle of Dom Perignon on there. So my son and I sat down, cracked open a bottle of very expensive champagne, and watched it. We liked it. I wish I could say I loved the show. I love the actors more than I love the show.
What I'm missing?
What's that? V Wars.
Oh, I gotta go back and watch it.
Yeah, and a bunch of the actors have since become friends. Adrian Holmes, Ian Somerhalder, Laura Vandervoort, a lot of them become friends of mine. Michael Grey-Eyes, and that's cool. But they could have dug much deeper into the underpinnings of the book, which were racism, intolerance, and addiction. And they just started put a toe in the water on racism, and
like last 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, and I know they were setting it up for the next season, but they should have hit that at episode 4.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
I think the show would have. I mean, what still was #1 show in 120 markets, which was great. But I think I think Netflix might even have brought us back after COVID had they had gone edgier with it. And the version of the show that Ian and I are working on now, we're not pulling any punches. We're going dark. We're going.
You have to let us know when that's getting ready to drop, so we can go ahead and.
Well, we're about to go out and shop it soon, so it's going to be a long haul. I've got a couple other projects in the works at the moment. I've got a movie in development right now called Rotten Ruin, based on my teen post-apocalyptic zombie stories. I did a whole series about growing up after the zombie apocalypse, and George Romero loved the books. It was among his favorite zombie books, and he and I became really good friends toward the end. And he and I actually did an anthology together of Night of the Living Dead stories. And we're in discussions with Peacock right now about doing a series based on that show.
We need that now. I'm a Night of the Living Dead fan. We need that now.
Yeah, it's called Nights of the Living Dead as the anthology. There's audiobooks out there too. And I don't know if you guys ever watched the show Psych.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so
on USA Network. Yeah.
Yeah, the star of Psych, James Roday Rodriguez, he's my producing partner for the TV show we're pitching because he's a huge horror nerd.
Huh.
Every season of Psych had one horror episode that he would write and direct, and we're hoping to get to be in a pilot if we can sell it. Harold Perrineau wants to be in it too if we can sell it. So,
man,
I will sacrifice a goat to the elder gods to make this happen.
Okay. I and Theo and some friends of ours do some acting too. So if y'all looking for some extras, holla.
Wait, you ready?
I don't know how you would like being a zombie, but we could have a conversation about that.
You ready?
I think. Well, just one second. I would love to see a zombie scene in like a pop culture thing, because I did a novel called Code Zero where a zombie plague was released at DragonCon in Atlanta. So I would have some of your friends all be pop culture zombies, with the t-shirts and everything else. It'd be great. Cosplayers.
That's a way to get away with it too.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. Yeah, they put Captain America in a zombie film. Cosplay him. Yeah.
There's Marvel zombies, and it'll be an Easter egg somewhere else.
Yeah. And also, I got to write, part of Marvel Zombies, Marvel Zombies Return. So I do have a footprint in that too. So, and by the way, unfortunately, I have to go soon.
That is.
I could talk.
You say Marvel.
Where are you guys?
I got to ask you. Do you have a Marvel zombie action figure? I got to ask.
Yes, I do. In fact, let me tilt it up, and I don't know if you can see it.
That big T'Challa one? Do you have that big T'Challa one?
Hold on. No, I have a Wolverine one up there. He's between the Wolfman and Cthulhu. And I have the Spider-Man one that they did from my comic, which actually, I guess, was my first action figure. And I have him up there somewhere too. But yeah, so I loved that was a fun project. There were 4 of us working on that, and we had way too much fun.
They dropped your Marvel. It was a HasLab project last year. They did your Giant Man, and they did him as a Marvel zombie. They gave him a Marvel zombie face and everything like that.
Yeah, that was fun. For What If, yeah.
That's all right. Listen, you.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for coming by and dropping all of this amazing knowledge and information. We're gonna get out of here together, but we want to talk to you real quick if you got a few seconds after. Okay. Rock with me, nation. Thank y'all so very much for pulling up. Theo, tell them what you want to tell them, and then we're going to go good night.
Listen, so y'all know we got my wife coming through y'all with the DIY project, Skyline Design Saturdays, 11 a.m. Make sure y'all see me. This is my lock cap that she made. Rock With Me Nation colors. Y'all see it. Y'all asked for it. We got it. She's going to be making some coasters and everything, some bucket hats and everything like that. Other than that, y'all know Monday through Friday, mornings in Wakanda with DOB. Wednesday, what a week it was. Wednesday. Thursday, my brother D-Real. Then Friday, we coming back right here again and everything like that. But that's it. That's it. That's it.
Juneteenth weekend. Go out, do something Juneteenth-y. It's actually the holiday be celebrated Wednesday on the 19th. You can't know where you're going to unless you know where you came from. So, with that, Jonathan, do you want to do some self-plugging?
Well, you know, I got a new book out, so sure, let me do a quick plug on that. My latest novel is called Necrotech, and it's deep space cosmic horror. It's basically what happens if a space station from our area accidentally got transported to the far side of the galaxy, and it turns out that the creatures like Cthulhu and so on came to Earth because they were afraid of what's out there, and now we're out there. So it's a wild, kick-ass adventure that ends with giant battles with giant ghost-driven like mechs. So if you imagine Pacific Rim, but ghosts in them piling, that's kind of the name.
Kind of Warhammer-ish.
A little bit, you know, but it's very character-driven, and I had a lot of fun with it. It just came out, and I'm writing the sequel now, and just having a ton of fun with it. And also, if you guys are Joe Ledger fans, go to my Facebook page or any of my social media pages and follow the backer kit. You know, the backer kit fun thing for the Joe Ledger graphic novel. We're a little more than halfway funded already, and we're looking forward to have some fun with that. And I got a Godzilla versus Cthulhu comic coming out. So we premiered at Comic-Con.
Godzilla fan here.
Yeah, I'm checking out the Necrotech. I was seeing where it was and everything like that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go make it do what it goes.
Okay.
If anyone out there, you're probably all Black Panther fans to begin with, but go back and read the whole run, see the evolution of the character. Man, there's
that's what we talk about over here. We tell folks to go all the way back.
Reviewed regularly around here.
That's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to be watching now that I know about you guys, and I've made new friends. So
yeah.
Oh yes, by all means subscribe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have this saying over here: if you know us, grow us, and sharing is caring. And it ain't just a saying; it's something that we actually embrace. We support one another, and to your point, Ronnie is one of the youngest people. Nico Bean is one. We tell folks go back. If you just came in with the character, go all the way back to 1966. As a matter of fact, we don't want to talk to you till you read Jungle Action.
Yep.
Come.
And with that, that's it for now, y'all. But fret not, I'll be coming at you with another one of the other ones. And until I do, y'all be good. Be good to each other.